I want to talk to you about planning an essay. That's what we're going to be doing this week, and there are several steps in the process that are particularly important. We're going to talk about the first of those today. The first part of the process is to make a determination about the purpose and the topic. Those two things are obviously foundational. The order in which we make these choices is often determined by the situation, but much of the time we begin with the topic. We may, however, begin with the purpose. Today we're going to discuss topic first. What topic will be addressed in the essay? In your textbook, Writing Today, Johnson, Sheehan, and Payne talk about angle. And when they do that, they're asking you to think in terms of your view or perspective. What or how you see something in a way that is new or fresh. Have you noticed something different? Do you have a unique perspective? The general idea, though, is that most topics are too large to address in their entirety. But we can look at a slice of the story, an angle that we can address thoroughly. In order to do that, we can consider an approach. Through whose eyes do you see the topic? Are you a novice, someone who is an experienced person at this activity or about this subject? Are you an outsider, an insider? How can you frame the idea, or into what context can you put it? Is this something that's being discussed at work? Is it something that's in the news and being discussed in the media? Is it something that you're discussing at home around the dinner table? Think about how you can see the story or the topic, such as it is. If you think about a journalist, when they tell a story, they tell the story from a particular perspective. In the fall, during the national conventions for the political parties, reporters did not tell us about the whole convention, whichever of the two conventions it was. They would tell us about one aspect, the representatives or the delegates from our area, or they would discuss a particular topic, or they would discuss the meeting rooms. They would find one particular area to focus on. So when we think about a topic, we think about it broadly, and then we think about narrowing it to a particular focus. In your textbook, on page 15, you'll find this figure, the 5 elements of the rhetorical situation. And you'll notice that topic is just one of those elements that must be addressed. But we have to think of it in terms of the other elements of the rhetorical situation. Your topic does not exist separate and apart from those. It exists in that context of the rhetorical situation. The next thing that we consider when we are planning an essay is the purpose of the essay. What do we want to do? Do we want to inform or persuade? The general categories that we look at, but additionally we may seek to entertain or to speculate. On page 20 in your textbook you find this chart which lists verbs that we use that are associated with the purpose of the text. So if we're writing an informative paper, we may seek to inform, we may define, help our reader understand how we see things and how we understand it. We may instruct them, we may explain, demonstrate, or illustrate. All of those are papers that have the purpose of informing the audience. On the other hand, if we're writing a persuasive paper, obviously we're going to persuade. We're wanting to influence our reader. We may want to seek change. We may want to advocate for a position. We may defend or justify. But in any case, when we are writing persuasive papers, we tend to use these verbs. And these are things that we can This is one way that language connects to the purpose of the paper that we're writing. Topic and purpose are two very important components of the rhetorical situation, but also we have to take into account the context, that is, the world in which the topic will be addressed, and the audience or reader. To whom are you writing, or who do you think is going to be hearing the message that you're delivering, whether it is to inform or persuade, and regardless of the topic. Second, the audience is also a determinant. We consider writing to be a creative act, whether it is writing that is done to inform or persuade, or imaginative literature in fiction. In either case, the author chooses information and arranges it in a particular way, and the reader responds both on an emotional level and interprets on an intellectual level. If the success of writing is determined by its effectiveness in accomplishing its purpose, the determinant of that success is measured by the audience response and understanding. If we go back to the analogy of the free throw, we know if the ball goes through the hoop. We know if we were successful. But we know if we're successful in writing only when we see how effective we were with our audience. Our audience becomes our hoop, if you will. We need to think in terms of what response we want to elicit. Are we wanting to amuse them and make them laugh? Are we wanting to make them angry in order to cause them to act in a particular way? Do we simply want them to appreciate a point of view, an attitude, an activity? And what do you want the reader to understand? When we write, we are revealing something about a topic, and we are also revealing things about ourselves. So be aware that when we write, we do not do it in a vacuum. We are taking the audience into consideration. That is particularly essential. Our level of formality, the language that we choose, the words we choose, both what they mean and how they mean and how we interpret them, as well as our references or examples. One option for you to consider references and examples is the mindset list at Beloit College that they create every year. We'll take just a minute to go there. This is the link that you have access to. Notice that this is a list that's created every year, and it reflects the worldview of freshman college students. Its first list was for the members of 2002, students who were born in 1980. And if we go to that list, look at number 26. Walkman was introduced by Sony. Number 10. These students never had a polio shot, and they probably don't know what it is. Number 30. Popcorn has always been cooked in a microwave, and they've always had cable. Look at the mindset list for the freshmen who entered in 2016. Bill Clinton is a senior statesman whose presidency these students know very little about. If they miss the Daily Show, they can get their news on YouTube. The Green Bay Packers have always celebrated with the Lambeau Leap, and their folks have never gazed with pride at a new set of bound encyclopedias on the bookshelf. The world changes. This list shows us how much and in what ways, and it allows us to understand how differently we need to frame information when we write. So if we consider context, that is where this takes place. It shapes how your readers will interpret your documents. So is your reader an incoming freshman who has that worldview that Beloit shows us, or is it someone who is much older or much younger? And in any case, it's important to understand that how you write, your medium is in an essay, a web page, where your reader is going to encounter this in an academic setting, sitting at home, and what's going on in the world around them. All of those influence how your reader interprets what you have to say. On page 35, your textbook addresses each of these elements of the rhetorical context. Your topic, what is the exact topic? Remember, that's one of the things that we want to look at when we write, is how are we making it exact? What's inside and outside the boundaries? Have you sharpened your topic? That is, have you made your focus such that you can handle it in the space and time that you have available? In a freshman composition course, 2 pages as a minimum, 3 probably. Depends on your instructor if it's in a writing class, in any academic class. But think in terms of how much space you have as you narrow your focus. What's new or different about your approach? What's happened recently that makes the topic interesting to you, to your readers? And what makes your ideas slightly different? You don't want to simply provide information that's just like what everybody else thinks. You're wanting to give a new or fresh perspective. And what exactly do you want to achieve when you're doing this? What is it that you're wanting to create for the reader? Do you want them to believe something or do something? That's typically persuasive. Do you want them to appreciate something that you appreciate? Do you want them to share your frustration? What are your readers' expectations, values, and attitudes? Those things are very important. Sometimes we talk about sympathetic and non-sympathetic audiences. Do they already agree with us or know about what we have to talk about? Think in terms of what they expect from your writing, what their values and attitudes are, because that is going to in some way influence what you write. That doesn't mean you have to cater to someone else's values and attitudes, but you should have an appreciation and a respect for them as you approach a topic, because it is in those ways that it shapes what you do. It shapes your content, your organization, how you write, and your design. Here we're writing essays. We're organizing based on standard, acceptable methodologies. And we design our document in MLA format. With regard to context, how are your readers going to encounter this document? I'm going to encounter it in an academic setting, reviewing your paper for your ability to write well, to plan, and to determine what you want to say before you even put all your words down on paper. Think in terms of the trends that will influence how students react to, or how your readers react to what you have to say. How does this fit into a larger context? Again, you can maintain your principle and your integrity, but you always need to take into consideration who your audience is. We can tell the very same story to 3 different audiences. One good example is, how would I tell a story to my grandmother, to you in a class, to my best friend? You can put yourself in that situation. How would you tell the story to someone who is 30 years your senior? How would you tell the story in the classroom? How would you tell the story to your best friend? Same is true for any topic, academic or otherwise. How you tell the story is determined in large part by the person or persons who will be listening. This week, we're going to be planning an essay, and I'm establishing some of the parameters because I want you to focus on the process, what you need to do in order to accomplish creating a plan. First of all, purpose. This week, our purpose is going to be to inform. You may choose your tone to be entertaining, but your purpose is primarily to inform. The topic this week is going to be either something that you enjoy or something that you find challenging. I have a list. I tried to make it fairly wide-ranging. I don't want you to describe a process, but I want you to choose elements of the activity or the situation that you find to be particularly enjoyable or that you find to be challenging. And in either case, I want you to think in terms in terms of the best aspects or the most challenging aspects. We'll talk about organizational strategies a little bit later, but look again. It can be anything from driving to work to peeling an orange, parenting, meeting new people, some physical activity that you enjoy or dislike, something that you sit and contemplate, something that you participate in, something that you observe. What is something that you enjoy or something that you find challenging? What is the most enjoyable or the most challenging about it? We'll talk about organizational aspects a little bit later, but this is the topic for your informational essay. The next aspect is audience and context, your reader and the world in which the topic will be addressed. The audience, you recall, is determinate. It determines how you write and whether or not they respond and understand the way you want them to is a measure of your success. This week, the audience is the class, the people you met in the online discussion board, and your instructor and me. Since the context is academic, your language should be appropriate to that setting. It typically would be in third person. However, in this case, first person will be acceptable, but second person, as always, is not. If you have questions, Sorry, a little technical difficulty. If you have questions, first review the text and the lecture. If those don't answer your questions, please ask me. If you don't have questions, move ahead to the next step, which is pre-writing. This step is one of the most essential steps in the writing process, so please don't skip it and certainly don't skimp.